Hey guys, welcome back to For StarCraft 2 Strategy, your number one location for step-by-step strategy and tutorial videos. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Terran vs. Zerg strategy. Basically what this is, it's a good strong counter, or rather it's a good strong reaction to your Zerg opponent early expanding. Basically the advantage that you can take of your opponent when they early expand is the fact that they basically dumped resources into this expansion and thusly lack an army in comparison to what you could have at that point. To reiterate a little bit, or to make myself a little more clear, say your Zerg opponent, as we're going to see in this game, goes for an early expansion and they spend 300 minerals, which is what a hatch rate costs. In turn, instead of you spending minerals for a command center as an expansion, you use those minerals to make an army and you push out against him. Now, 300 minerals worth of army versus a hatchery that's worth 300 minerals, who's going to win? Well, since the hatchery doesn't attack, obviously the units are going to win. And that's kind of the philosophy, or that's the idea behind hitting someone when they early expand in a proper time frame. If you can get there before they can fully saturate the expansion and before they can take advantage of those extra resources that they've lost, then you're going to be able to wipe them out simply because of the fact that they won't have enough to counter you with, because they will have spent their resources on that expansion. So as far as when to do this, well, this is something you're kind of going to have to learn over time, but I'm going to try to show you in this video here a good example of the more or less the perfect time to push out. You're going to hear timing push a lot. What's a timing push? What does it mean? Do I need to count when I see his expansion 3 minutes and 30 seconds after that expansion to attack him? No, that's not what a timing push means. It's not literally at this time. It means at the most advantageous time for you. And in this situation, the most advantageous time for us is going to be when siege tech is researched, because we're going to be hitting our Zerg opponent with siege tanks, Hellions, and a couple Marines. Very, very strong mix against early Zerg, an early Zerg army, which could consist of Roaches, Zerglings, and Banelings. If you get some siege tanks, some Marines, and some Hellions, they should do very well against them, especially considering that their armies will be smaller than yours. So getting into the mix of things here is what are we looking at as far as timings. Again, these are step-by-step strategy videos, going to try to give you a really clear idea of what you should be doing, how you should be doing it. I do believe, yes, I have sent out a scout here, so I am seeing right now the expansion, bam, right there. So I do see the expansion, and that's when I decided to go for this build here. I did a standard opening. I've said it before, I'll say it a million times again, just to reiterate and just to get new players into the thinking of what the standard is, what the basic is that you should be doing. Standard Terran opening, 10 supply, you get a supply depot, 12 supply, you get a barracks, then you build a refinery, and then you branch out from there. At 100 minerals, I got my factory, then I'm getting my tech lab, and I'm going to be getting some siege tanks. And then, since I saw this and I decided I'm going to be going the siege tank Hellion push, I went ahead and I got a second factory. The second factory is going to be used to pump out some Hellions while I've got siege tanks and siege tech researching over here. And the extra minerals I got, I'm going to be using for some marine production as well as SCPs, try to keep my mineral flow constant. As you can see, I do have 2 refineries up. The second refinery went up while this orbital command was building. And as it pretty much is per the usual in any game, I usually go with the orbital command almost immediately after the barracks is built. Taking advantage of those mules is very, very beneficial to you. Same notes as always, make sure you stay on top of your supply depots. Never, never, never want to get supply blocked. It really does set you back tremendously. Hotkey your buildings. I myself, I always go with the command center or orbital command here is 4, 5 is my barracks, 6 is factories, and then when I get starports that goes to 7. My army, I usually do 1 through 3 is what I hotkey my offensive units for, and then everything thereafter I use for kind of miscellaneous stuff. Like if I have a Raven, I usually kind of toss that in the later areas just because that's where I'm comfortable with them being. So this timing push, we're about to see it in effect. So let's see, he has got his expansion, he hasn't fully saturated it, and so this is the timing that I'm talking to you about. The time between when he puts it up and when he takes advantage of the fact that he set himself back in minerals and army count by putting it up. he is at that point not fully saturated, only has a few drones, finally getting a queen there to get some spawn larvae. If you let this sit up for like 4 or 5 more minutes, then you're going to be at a huge disadvantage, because he's going to have this extra mineral income that you don't, running off of one base, and that's why we're going to be pushing now. And since we decided to go with siege tanks and Hellions, we would be pushing at the time that siege tech is researched. If we wanted to go with, say, Marines and Marauders, we'd be pushing at the time we get stim pack, or we get concussive shells, or we get combat shields. Basically, when you're at a greater advantage than your opponent, that's when you want to push. So we have our siege tanks, we have siege tech research, now's the time. Moving forward here, going to be having the siege tanks kind of knock off these frontal defenses, and these guys we're going to be holding back. We're using them primarily to defend the siege tanks. It's actually, although I kind of blew up my forces there, it's really good that he attacked that instead of the siege tanks, because we want these to stay alive. And that's the whole purpose of keeping these guys back, to either be A, a distraction, or B, we're going to use our Hellions to roast any Zerglings that try to run up to these tanks here. You want to get a good spread as well. It's going to make it harder for them to take out any. If you cluster up, it's going to be much easier for them to take out your tanks. So get a nice spread, try to get a concave of shells being knocked at your opponent's front door. Again, use these forces to just reinforce and help your siege tanks. Again, make sure your production buildings are rallied to your opponent. You can always want to provide support to any attack you do, because otherwise they're going to eventually build the forces to push back your attack. But if you have constant reinforcements coming up, doing more damage than they can take, then you should be able to overwhelm them. That's exactly what happens here. Siege tanks are just tearing apart his expansion. Taking a look at his base, not really too much going on here. Again, he wasn't really able to do much. He wasn't able to take advantage of this tech because he spent too many resources on this expansion. Just completely roasted all the forces that he had, and he is not too happy and decides to go ahead and leave the game. So again, just a quick overview here. Standard opening. It's a 10 supply depot, 12 barracks, a refinery coming after that, getting the factory orbital command second, refinery, and then after seeing that early expansion, deciding to go with the siege tank Hellion in this one. We just went ahead and built a second factory, got our tech lab, got our siege tank and siege tech, and we pushed out from there. So there you go, guys, a good way to counter your opponent who decides to go for an early expansion. This has been for StarCraft 2 Strategy. Please do stay tuned for future videos. Keep watching and keep owning, guys.